Welcome to HFY Stories. If you're ready for jaw-dropping stories and a universe full of excitement, hit that subscribe button like it's the big red button in a space opera. The challenge. The galaxy trembled under the iron fist of King Zarthol, ruler of the Zevithan Empire. His conquests spanned hundreds of star systems, leaving planets in ruin and entire civilizations brought to their knees. The alien king was infamous for his brutal and tyrannical methods, favoring raw power over diplomacy. One by one, he had crushed every force that dared oppose him, until his empire stretched across the stars like a dark shroud. King Zarthol sat upon his grand throne, an imposing figure with scaled skin that shimmered in hues of emerald and gold. His four eyes, like blazing suns, scanned the assembly hall of his palace, which was adored with trophies from his countless victories. Alien skulls and armor pieces from defeated warriors decorated the walls, a testament to his might. In the center of the hall, kneeling and shackled, was the ambassador of the Galactic Council, a consortium of various species that sought to maintain peace across the cosmos. The ambassador, a frail but wise-looking Xarxi named Olex, had come with a message of peace. King Zarthol had made his disdain for peace known by ordering Olex to be brought before him in chains. "Speak, Olex of the Xarxi," Zarthol commanded, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "What message does the council bring that is so urgent it dares interrupt my time of glory?" Olex struggled to his feet, his translucent skin showing the blue veins underneath, his antennae trembling with fear. He had heard stories of King Zarthol's cruelty, but standing before the Zevithan ruler, the reality was far more terrifying. He gathered his courage and spoke, his voice wavering. "Great King Zarthol," Olex began, bowing deeply. "The Galactic Council implores you to cease your conquests and join us in a treaty of peace. There has been enough bloodshed, and the galaxy longs for stability. We offer this treaty as a chance for you to be part of a united and prosperous galaxy." Zarthol's eyes narrowed, a smile playing on his lips. He leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Olex. "A treaty of peace." Zarthol laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that sent shivers down Olex's spine. "Peace is the refuge of the weak. The galaxy is mine by right of conquest. I will not be bound by words on a parchment." Olex expected this response, but he had one more card to play, one final hope. He straightened, trying to project confidence. "Then perhaps, great king, you would consider a challenge," Olex proposed, his voice firmer. "A duel. A representative of the council against a champion of your choosing. If your champion wins, the council will recognize your conquests. But if our champion wins, you will agree to the treaty and cease your expansions." The hall fell silent. Zarthol's eyes blazed with interest. A duel would not only entertain him, but also serve as a public display of his dominance. It would be a spectacle for all to see. "Interesting," Zarthol mused, rubbing his chin with a clawed hand. "Who is this champion of yours, Olex?" "A mighty warrior, no doubt." Olex hesitated. He knew the risks, but the council had agreed that this was the only way to avoid further bloodshed. He took a deep breath and spoke. "Our champion is a human," Olex declared, his voice steady. "A warrior of Earth." At the mention of human, murmurs spread through the assembly. Humans were known for their tenacity and resilience, but they were relatively new to the galactic stage, their capabilities largely untested. Zarthol's interest was piqued. "A human?" Zarthol laughed again, a cruel, mocking sound. "You insult me, Olex." Do you think a human could stand against one of my champions? Olex met Sarthel's gaze, unflinching. This human is no ordinary warrior. He is a decorated soldier, known for his skill in battle and strategic mind. His name is Captain Jonathan Kane. Zarthel's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. Very well, Olex. I accept your challenge. I will send my finest champion to meet this Captain Kane. But know this, when my champion stands victorious, I will take Earth as my prize, and humans will serve the Zevithan Empire for all time. Olex bowed, hiding his relief. Then it is agreed. The duel will take place on neutral ground in 1 week. May the best warrior win. As Olex was led away, Exarthol called for his generals. His mind was already turning, plotting the events of the coming duel. He would not leave anything to chance. His champion would be the most feared warrior in his ranks, one known throughout the Empire for his brutality and skill in combat. Send for General Kor, Exarthol ordered. Tell them he is to face the human in a duel. I want no mistakes. This human must be crushed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Captain Jonathan Kane received a transmission from the Galactic Council. As he read the message, his brows furrowed in concern. A duel? Against the Zevithan Empire's champion. He knew of King Zarthel's reputation, and it was not one to be taken lightly. But Kane was a soldier, bound by duty and honor. He had fought in countless battles, faced enemies more powerful than he could have imagined, and emerged victorious. He stood on the bridge of his ship, the Serenity, a sleek Earth Alliance cruiser. His crew looked to him for guidance, knowing that their captain was about to make a decision that could change the fate of humanity. Kane turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, her expression mirroring his own concern. "It seems we have been called to battle once more," Kane said, his voice calm but resolute. "Prepare the ship, Lieutenant. We set course for the neutral planet of Velthar. We have a duel to attend." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Aye, Captain. We'll show them what humans are made of." As the Serenity moved through the stars, Kane thought about the challenge ahead. He knew the risks, but he also knew that this was a chance to prove humanity's strength and to stand against a tyrant. The galaxy needed a champion, and he was ready to answer the call. The Clash of Titans. The neutral planet of Velthar lay in the midst of an uncharted sector of the galaxy, far from the prying eyes of civilization. Its landscape was a desolate expanse of rocky plains and jagged mountains, with violent storms frequently ravaging the surface. Velthar had been chosen as the site for the duel because of its isolation, an ideal arena for a contest that could decide the fate of the galaxy. As the Serenity descended through the turbulent atmosphere, Captain Jonathan Kane stood on the observation deck, watching the barren world come into view. The planet's harshness reminded him of Earth's deserts, where he had trained for combat years ago. This was a place that could break a lesser warrior, but Kane felt a surge of resolve. He had faced worse and survived. "Captain, we've received a transmission from the Zevithan fleet," Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell announced from the comms station. "They're here. King Zarthel's flagship, the Obsidian Wrath, is in orbit. They say they're ready for the duel." Kane nodded. "Acknowledged. Prepare the shuttle for descent. It's time to meet our hosts." The Serenity landed on a flat plateau, where a Zevithan landing party awaited them. The air was thick with tension as Kane and Sereth stepped off the shuttle, flanked by a small contingent of Earth Alliance Marines. Ahead of them stood General Kor, the Zevithan Empire's most feared warrior. Kor was a massive figure, towering over Kane, his dark-scaled skin covered in battle scars. His eyes glowed a deep red, and his mouth twisted into a grin that revealed rows of sharp, serrated teeth. "Welcome to Velthar, human," Kor growled, his voice a guttural rumble. "I am General Kor, chosen by King Zarthal to represent the might of the Zevithan Empire. You must be Captain Kane, the champion of the weak." Kane stepped forward, meeting Kor's gaze without flinching. The Zevithan general radiated a palpable aura of menace, but Kane had learned long ago not to be intimidated by appearances. "General Kor," Kane replied, his voice steady. "I'm here to ensure that the galaxy has a chance at peace. This duel is not just about us. It's about the future of countless lives. So let's get this over with." Kor's grin widened. "I admire your courage, human, but it will not save you. I have crushed warriors far greater than you. When I am finished, there will be nothing left but ashes." The two opponents moved to the center of the plateau, a wide expanse of rocky ground that would serve as their battleground. Around them, the respective delegations from the Zevithan Empire and the Galactic Council stood as silent witnesses. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. A drone hovered above, projecting a holographic display that connected to both the Serenity and the Obsidian Wrath, ensuring that every moment of the duel would be transmitted to both fleets. This was not just a battle between two warriors, it was a spectacle that would be observed by thousands. Kane and Kor stood facing each other, their hands on their weapons. Kane carried a plasma sword, its blade shimmering with a blue light that cut through the air like a razor. Kor held a massive warhammer, its head glowing with a deadly energy that crackled and hissed. A voice echoed from the drone, signaling the start of the duel. "By the decree of the Galactic Council and the Zevithan Empire, this duel shall commence. The victor shall decide the fate of the galaxy." For a moment, the world stood still. Then, with a roar, Kor charged, his warhammer swinging in a wide arc aimed at Kane's head. Kane moved with lightning speed, ducking under the blow and slashing with his plasma sword. The blade met Kor's armor with a sizzle, leaving a scorch mark, but not penetrating the thick scales. Kor laughed, his hammer crashing down again. Kane rolled to the side, coming up with a swift kick that connected with Kor's knee. The Zevithan staggered but recovered quickly, swinging his hammer with a force that shook the ground. The battle was intense, each strike ringing out across the plateau like thunder. Kor's strength was immense, his blows powerful enough to shatter stone. But Kane was faster, his movements precise and calculated. He knew he couldn't match Kor's raw power, so he relied on his agility and skill to keep the general off balance. The duel raged on, the air filled with the sounds of clashing metal and grunts of exertion. Kor's confidence began to waver as Kane evaded his every attack, countering with strikes that left burns and cuts on the general's skin. Kane's eyes were focused, his breathing steady, as if he were in a dance, each movement deliberate. Kor snarled, anger flaring in his eyes. He swung his hammer in a wide arc, forcing Kane to leap back. With a surge of energy, Kor brought the hammer down, aiming for the ground beneath Kane's feet. The impact sent a shockwave through the earth, and Kane was thrown off balance, stumbling back. Sealing his chance, Kor lunged, his hammer raised for a crushing blow. But Kane was ready. As Kor charged, Kane twisted his body, using his momentum to drive his plasma sword upward. The blade pierced Kor's side, burning through scales and flesh. Kor roared in pain, staggering back, his hand clutching the wound. Kane didn't hesitate. He pressed the attack, slashing with his sword, each strike aimed with precision. Kor was driven back, his defenses faltering. Blood oozed from his wounds, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Cain saw the opening and moved in for the final blow. He raised his plasma sword, ready to end the fight. But Kor, with a last burst of strength, swung his hammer in a desperate attempt to take Cain down with him. Cain dodged, but the hammer grazed his shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through his body. Ignoring the pain, Cain brought his sword down in a swift arc, slicing through Kor's armor and into his chest. Kor's eyes widened in shock as he fell to his knees, the hammer slipping from his grasp. He looked up at Cain, a mixture of rage and disbelief in his eyes. "You will not win," Kor gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. Cain stood over him, his expression unreadable. "It's over, Kor. Surrender, and let there be peace." Kor's eyes blazed one last time, and then he collapsed, his body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The plateau fell silent, the only sound the wind howling through the mountains. Cain lowered his sword, his breathing heavy. He looked around at the assembled witnesses, the shock evident on their faces. The mighty general of the Zevithan Empire lay defeated at the hands of a human. The silence was broken by the sound of clapping. Cain turned to see King Zarthal himself standing at the edge of the plateau, his expression one of amusement rather than anger. "Well done, Captain Cain," Exarthal said, his voice carrying across the distance. "You have defeated my champion. But know this, the duel was only the beginning. The real battle is yet to come." Cain met Starthal's gaze, his eyes steely. "If you want a war, King Zarthal, then you will have one. But note this, I will not rest until there is peace." Zarthal smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "We shall see, human, we shall see." As the sun set over the barren landscape of Velthar, Cain knew that the fight was far from over. The galaxy stood on the brink of war, and he was ready to do whatever it took to protect his home and ensure a future free from tyranny. The King's Gambit. The aftermath of the duel rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. News of General Kor's defeat spread quickly, and with it, the reputation of Captain Jonathan Cain. He was now known as the warrior who had bested one of the Zevithan Empire's greatest champions. But for Cain, the victory was hollow. He knew that this was just the beginning of a larger conflict. The real challenge lay ahead. Back aboard the Serenity, the mood was tense. The crew had watched the duel from the ship's viewing deck, their hearts pounding with each clash of weapons. Now, as they gathered in the briefing room, the atmosphere was heavy with uncertainty. Captain Cain stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of calm determination. Across from him, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell looked on, her eyes filled with concern. Around the table sat the rest of the command staff, each one wearing expressions that ranged from worry to outright fear. "Captain," Sarah began, breaking the silence, "what do we do now? King Zarthal won't take this defeat lightly. He'll retaliate. You heard him. He wants a war." Cain nodded, his expression grim. "I know, Sarah. That's why we have to be ready. The Zevithan Empire is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. If they decide to launch an all-out attack, the Earth Alliance and the Galactic Council will be hard-pressed to stop them. But we have one advantage. Zarthal is arrogant. He thinks he can intimidate us into submission." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's science officer, leaned forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "What about the Galactic Council? They won't just stand by and let the Zevithans start a war. They'll intervene, won't they?" Cain sighed. "The Council is fractured, Elena. Some factions want peace, but others fear the Zevithans and would rather appease them than risk conflict. Zarthal is counting on that fear to keep the Council divided. If we want to prevent a war, we need to show the galaxy that the Zevithans aren't invincible. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Green, the ship's tactical officer, spoke up. What about taking the fight to them? If we can strike at the heart of their empire, show them that we're not afraid, it might force them to back down. Kane considered this for a moment. It was a bold move, but a dangerous one. Directly attacking the Zevithan Empire could escalate the situation beyond control. Still, they needed a plan, something to tip the scales in their favor. We need more information, Kane said finally. We need to know what Exarthal is planning, and we need allies who are willing to stand with us. If we can find a way to disrupt the Zevithan war machine, we might be able to force Exarthal to the negotiating table. A voice came over the ship's intercom, interrupting the meeting. Captain, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting your immediate presence at a summit on Velora Prime. Kane's eyes narrowed. Velora Prime? That's neutral territory. Why would they want to meet there? Sarah's expression turned grim. It's a trap, Jonathan. Zarthol knows the Council will be there. He'll use the opportunity to make his move. Kane nodded slowly. You're right, Sarah, but we have to go. If Exarthol is planning something, we need to be there to stop him. Prepare the ship for departure. We leave for Velora Prime immediately. The Serenity slipped into orbit around Velora Prime, a lush, verdant planet known for its sprawling forests and crystal-clear lakes. It was a stark contrast to the barren world of Velthar, and its beauty was almost surreal. The Galactic Council had chosen Velora Prime for the summit because of its reputation as a haven of peace and neutrality, but Kane couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, Kane glanced at Sarah, who sat beside him. Her face was tense, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. They were both on edge, aware that this could be the moment when Zarthol made his move. The shuttle landed in a clearing near a massive stone building that served as the meeting place for the summit. Delegates from various planets were already gathered, their voices echoing through the air as they discussed the recent events. Kane and Sarah stepped out of the shuttle, their eyes immediately drawn to the imposing figure of King Zarthol, standing at the center of the gathering. Zarthol was as intimidating in person as he'd have been in the holographic transmission. His dark robes billowed around him, and his eyes glowed with a cold, calculating light. As Kane approached, Zarthol turned to face him, a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Captain Kane, Exarthol said, his voice smooth and mocking. How kind of you to join us. I was beginning to think you wouldn't show. Kane met Zarthol's gaze, his expression hard. You wanted this meeting, Zarthol. I'm here to hear what you have to say. But know this, I won't be intimidated by threats or posturing. If you want a fight, you'll get one. Zarthol chuckled. Always so eager for battle, aren't you, Captain? But today is not about fighting. Today is about showing the galaxy the strength of the Zevithan Empire. You see, I have no intention of negotiating. I have already won. Kane's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Zarthol's smile widened. Look around you, Captain. The delegates of the Galactic Council are here, watching, listening. They know what will happen if they oppose me. I have the power to destroy this world, to wipe it from existence with a single command. And unless the Council agrees to my terms, I will do just that. Kane's heart pounded. He glanced at Sarah, who had gone pale. You're bluffing, Kane said, his voice steady. You wouldn't risk a full-scale war. Zarthol's eyes flashed with anger. Do not underestimate me, human. I have nothing to lose. If the Council will not bow to my will, I will show them the consequences of defiance, starting with you." With a swift motion, Sarthal raised his hand, and a deafening roar filled the air. From the sky, a Xerithan warship descended, its weapons trained on the stone building. Panic erupted among the delegates as they realized the danger. Kane's hand went to his sidearm, but he knew it was useless against the might of a warship. Zarthal laughed, his voice booming over the chaos. "This is your last chance, Captain. Surrender, and I may spare your life. Resist, and you will die alone with everyone here." Kane's mind raced. He couldn't let Starthal win, but he couldn't risk the lives of the innocent delegates. He needed a plan, something to turn the tide in his favor. Then an idea struck him. It was a long shot, but it might be their only chance. Kane turned to Sarah, his voice low. "Get to the shuttle and contact the Serenity. Tell them to prepare for a combat extraction, and have them patch me through to General Corps' second-in-command. I need to speak with him now." Sarah nodded, understanding the urgency. She slipped away through the crowd, moving toward the shuttle. Kane turned back to Carthel, his expression defiant. "Your empire thrives on fear, Zarthal," Kane said, his voice loud enough for the delegates to hear. "But fear can be overcome. You think you've won because you have a warship pointed at us. But I've faced worse threats than you, and I've always come out on top." Zarthal's smile faltered, replaced by a snarl. "Brave words, human, but words will not save you." Kane took a deep breath. "No, they won't, but actions will." As the delegates watched in stunned silence, the sky above Velora Prime lit up with the arrival of the Serenity. The Earth Alliance ship moved into position, its weapons trained on the Xerithan warship. A tense standoff ensued, the two ships hovering above the planet, ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. Kane's voice came over the comms, calm and commanding. "This is Captain Jonathan Kane of the Earth Alliance. King Zarthal, stand down. If you fire on this planet, we will respond in kind. And believe me, we are more than capable of taking down your warship." As Zarthal glared at Kane, his hands clenched in fury. For a moment, it seemed like he might give the order to attack. But then, slowly, he lowered his hand. "You've made a powerful enemy today, Captain," Zarthal hissed. "This isn't over." Kane met his gaze, unflinching. "No, it's not. But today, we've won a battle. And as long as we stand together, we'll win the war." The final confrontation. The air was thick with tension. The Serenity and the Xerithan warship remained locked in a standoff above Velora Prime, their weapons primed and ready. Below, the delegates from the Galactic Council had scattered, seeking shelter from what seemed an imminent battle. Captain Jonathan Kane stood his ground, his eyes never leaving King Zarthal. "Call off your ship," Kane said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "There's no need for this to escalate. We can still resolve this peacefully." Zarthal's eyes gleamed with malice. "You think you can dictate terms to me, human? My empire spans the stars. I could crush your pitiful alliance in a single stroke." Kane's jaw tightened. "You underestimate humanity, Zarthal. We don't seek conflict, but we won't back down from a fight either. You lost today's duel. Honor that outcome, and let's end this before more lives are lost." Zarthal laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You speak of honor? You know nothing of it. Today's battle was merely a demonstration, a game. Now you will see the true power of the Xerithan Empire." As Zarthal spoke, the ground beneath them began to rumble. Kane's eyes darted to the sky, where a massive Xerithan fleet emerged from hyperspace, filling the skies above Velora Prime. The warship was just the vanguard. Now, an entire armada had arrived, casting a dark shadow over the planet. "This is what you face, Captain," Exarthal said, his voice triumphant. "An unstoppable force. Surrender now, or watch your worlds burn." Kane's heart pounded. They were outnumbered and outgunned. The Serenity was a powerful ship, but it was no match for an entire fleet. Still, he refused to give in to despair. He had one final card to play. "Serenity, this is Captain Kane," he said into his comm. "Activate the Omega Protocol." A brief pause. Then Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell's voice crackled over the comm. "Acknowledged, Captain. Omega Protocol activated." Xarthal's smile faltered. "What is this?" he demanded. Kane's face was a mask of calm determination. "The Omega Protocol is a failsafe, a last resort designed to neutralize threats like you. It's a weapon that can disrupt the power systems of any starship within range. Your fleet, Exarthal, is about to go dark." Carthal's eyes widened in fury. "You lie. No such weapon exists." Kane remained silent, waiting. A moment later, the skies above Velora Prime flickered with blinding light. One by one, the Zevithan warships powered down, their engines falling silent. The once mighty fleet drifted, powerless, in the void. Xarthal turned to Kane, his face a mask of rage. "You dare use such trickery against me?" Kane's voice was cold. "This was never a game, Xarthal. You threatened the lives of millions. I did what I had to do to protect them." With a roar of anger, Xarthal lunged at Kane, drawing a concealed energy blade from his robe. Kane was ready, his reflexes owned by years of combat. He sidestepped the attack, drawing his own blade in a single fluid motion. The two warriors clashed, their blades sparking as they met. Exarthal fought with the ferocity of a cornered beast, his strikes wild and powerful. But Kane was disciplined, his movements precise. He parried Xarthal's blows, looking for an opening. Around them, the delegates watched in awe and fear. The duel between Kane and Exarthal had become a symbol of the larger conflict, humanity's defiance against an empire that sought to dominate the galaxy. Xarthal snarled, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You will pay for this, human. I will tear you apart." Kane blocked another strike, his muscles straining. "You've lost, Exarthal. Your fleet is powerless. Surrender, and this can end now." "Never." Exarthal spat. He pressed his attack, driving Kane back with a series of savage blows. But Kane was not so easily defeated. He shifted his stance, bringing his blade up in a counter-attack that caught Exarthal off guard. The energy blade slipped from Xarthal's grasp, clattering to the ground. Kane pressed the advantage, disarming the king with a swift kick. Xarthal stumbled back, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "It's over," Kane said, his voice firm. "Order your forces to stand down." For a moment, Exarthal simply stood there, his chest heaving. Then, slowly, he raised his hands in surrender. "Very well, Captain Kane. You have won this day. But know this, my empire will not forget. There will be consequences." Kane nodded. "There always are." The aftermath of the standoff on Velora Prime was felt across the galaxy. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the situation, and the Zevithan Empire, humiliated by their defeat, retreated to lick its wounds. Captain Jonathan Kane stood on the bridge of the Serenity, looking out at the stars. The Serenity's Omega Protocol had saved countless lives, but the cost had been high. The threat of war still loomed, and the peace they had won was fragile. Sarah Mitchell approached, her expression one of relief, mixed with lingering concern. "We did it, Jonathan. We stopped them." Kane nodded, his face thoughtful. "For now, but Exarthal was right about one thing. The Zevithans won't forget this. They'll be back." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "And when they do, we'll be ready. Together." Kane turned to her, a small smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Yes, together." As the Serenity set a course back to Earth, Kane allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, full of unknown threats. But as long as they stood united, humanity would endure. The stars stretched out before them, a beacon of hope in the darkness. And Kane knew, deep in his heart, that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together. For they were more than just a crew, they were a family, and nothing could break that bond. The Serenity slipped into the blackness of space, carrying with it the promise of a future where freedom and justice prevailed. And Captain Jonathan Kane, the human warrior who had faced Dallin Empire, knew that their fight was far from over. But as long as there was hope, there was always a chance for victory. End of story. In this final part, the standoff reached its climax, and we saw Kane and Exarthal face off in a personal battle that symbolized the larger conflict. With the Serenity's Omega Protocol, Kane turned the tide and won the day, but the story ends with the promise of future challenges and the strength that comes from unity and hope. Feel free to share your thoughts in comments.